God is absurd sometimes in our lives. Sorry, my heart is racing because I was actually in rebellion against it for months on end. Okay, where do I even want to begin? 10-11 months ago, I was in the thick of posting my videos on my YouTube channel about women's roles in ministry and really wrestling with what does it look like to be a woman who is a gifted teacher and not to be in a denomination that ordains women. Where's my role? What do I do? While addressing those questions that I had, there was also the aspect that my husband's a pastor in a conservative denomination that doesn't ordain women. And when a wife of a pastor starts asking questions, that can quickly become very political. And I didn't want my husband to lose his job. The doctor is calling. This is Faith. All right. Thank you so much. That can quickly become political. We're living in the middle of South Carolina and we had moved there for his job. And so that's kind of tricky. If you're a pastor's wife, your whole life like literally is dictated by where you've moved for a job. It's like a missionary moving out. That was a big scary aspect of my questions. And part of the reason why I hesitated to ever ask questions about women's roles in the church was because that's a really big risk to my life, to my reputation, etc. I remember like very vividly, it was right after I moved into my studio, just like sob crying about it with the Lord. Of like, Lord, I don't want to move. My husband's job was never threatened or anything like that. However, after we kind of put that to rest and I was just honest with myself and my husband, there was just this nagging sense that even though we didn't have to move, I felt like the Lord kept having me address this idol of sorts, why I was so distraught over the moving aspect of it. I was surrendered enough to ask those questions about women's roles in the church and surrendered enough to be like, okay, whatever the scriptures say, like whatever a faithful biblical interpretation is. I was surrendered enough to do that, but I also really, really didn't want to move. And so I just felt like the Lord continually kept pressing like, why are you so unwilling to move? And if you were to look at our lives on paper, there'd be a lot of reasons why not to move. We had just gotten our boys plugged into a really great Christian school that like the whole church went to. I had just started a lease with my studio. Like there's just like a lot there. We had a great community. We loved the area. Like why would you move? Other than the fact that Joe had family 4 hours away and I had family 20 hours away. I remember telling Joseph, like, the Lord just keeps knocking on this issue every time I'm praying of like, yeah, but why are you so unwilling to move? Yeah, but why is this little town, this life that you've built here, such an idol in your heart? And Joseph was like, that's weird. Yeah, we should probably like address that. I mean, it's good that we love where we're at. It's good that we love this life that we've built. Or really that he's blessed us with, but like, yeah, this doesn't need to be an idol in our lives. By the summer, June, July, that had slowly morphed to feeling like the Lord had put it on my heart to be like, be willing to possibly move. And again, like, I remember sob crying to Joe, like for some reason I have this sense, the words like in my head were, this is the beginning of the end. I felt like the Lord had just like put that in my head or in my heart. Like, I get weird whenever someone says like, I feel like the Lord just told me this, but the Lord does put ideas or phrases upon my heart. And I remember that being one of those very significant moments where it's like, no, was that from you? Please don't let that be from you. Surely not. This is not the beginning of the end. We're not moving, like no. And so I remember talking to Joe, like I'm really unsettled about this. Like there's a lot of tension in my head and heart about this, but the Lord just keeps knocking on that door. Within like the first week of Joseph saying, okay, well, like we can consider this. Within a week, a church popped up that we had visited before, loved, and it's right near my family in Texas. It really was the beginning of the end. They ended up pursuing Joseph, and hey, editing Faith here, I realized I said nothing about Joe's coming to the same conviction, coming to the same realization that maybe possibly we were called to move, though we didn't see it coming. And it was around this time when the church just pursued him, and it was a church that we already knew of and already loved and had already talked about, like, man, this is a dream church to work at. If they ever have an opening, we gotta inquire. And it was around that time where he was like, if this does happen, this is totally from God.
But I forgot to say that when I was filming because I was so focused on getting to the point. Anyway, back to the video.
Oh man, it was very quick. It never happens that quick. The whole time we were just saying like, what's going on? But the Lord carried us, and I don't know what you're going through in your life, but like every single person we talked to about this is like, wow, that's awesome that God was so clear. I love like the testimony of God guiding you. I wish I had that clarity in my life with this issue or that issue, whatever. And it's kind of got me thinking because, how do I want to say this? Sorry, my heart is racing because I just want to like share the truth, honestly. And then on top of it, like I'm trying to give advice on how to like hear God's voice. And so if I wasn't praying daily, like in prayer journaling, like in depth, like having a conversation with God, we would still be in South Carolina. And it's not because I'm like psycho and hearing voices. God plucked us up, carried us, and has planted us here in Texas near my family at a dream church in a situation I would have never even made up. Way better than my dreams. Not out of something that I've done, but out of his ridiculous plan that I did not authorize. Like I was actually in rebellion against it for months on end. No, God, no, like sob crying there in my studio. And no, I'm not moving. Like we love our life here. And don't get me wrong, like we miss it every single day. But like I literally couldn't have captured a more perfect time in our lives, a more perfect church, a more perfect whatever. Like we definitely see God's fingerprints all over this. And even like the move itself has been so smooth, even comparable to like other moves that we've done. It's just a God thing. And so I think for those who say like, I really wish I had God's guidance, I'm asking these questions, I really wish I could hear God's voice, etc. I think sometimes you're not gonna know it's God's voice until you look back and you realize that was God's voice. Kind of like what I was expressing there with like, it's the beginning of the end. It was kind of like put on my heart or in my mind. I don't know how to describe it. It's not like this audible godly voice that I hear, at least not for me. Rather, it's ideas or clarity that I cannot muster up on my own, that I might actually be in rebellion against, that might actually be attacking my own idols. God, like I can't give you, I don't even need to give you all the details of our life to express to you guys that this was so stretching, so uncalled for, so complicated. And yet I can give you the testimony of that God truly carried us. When I tell you, I legit thought about it. I was like, I'm not crying in this video. When I tell you, there were, like, God carried us. Sorry. I sit here now in what will be my new studio. I started hanging the little ivy. When I tell you I sit here and I am blown away with his faithfulness. God is absurd sometimes in our lives. But are we surrendered enough to follow him even when it's absurd, even when it's crazy? Because you see, the part of the story that I didn't tell you is years ago, 3-4 years ago, we were begging God to get us near family. And we were talking with a church in Texas and it was like, just not happening. COVID hit and that opportunity disappeared because all churches stopped looking for a pastor. And Joe and I were gutted. And I was like, Joseph, like I can't do this anymore. I can't do this moving. Like I really wanted to be near family. I don't understand what God's doing. And the only door that stayed open was the door that we took in South Carolina, that job that he was just serving at. Within a week of moving there, even just like looking for housing and stuff, I had fallen in love with this cute little town. I'd fallen in love with the congregation. Like the church was amazing. But then it became my idol and I was unwilling to leave that church. I was unwilling to leave that congregation. But the moment I surrendered that idol at his feet and said, God, I will follow you no matter what, God actually ended up fulfilling a heart cry from years prior in a more beautiful way than I could have ever imagined or asked for. Maybe God has just closed a door for you. Maybe you're not sure if he's closing or opening a door for you. Maybe you're just confused about, was that God's voice? Is this just what I want? Like, etc. Bring that all before his feet. That noodled up, messy ball of emotionsness. Bring it all towards his feet. He's not afraid of your confusion. He's not afraid or disappointed that you can't exactly discern what his voice is. Instead, he's carrying you on a journey that you didn't write because you are not the author of life. He's carrying you on a journey that only he can take you on. And his story is better than what you would write. Because you see, Joe and I, we were talking to churches that were actually not that close to my family. They weren't even as good as God's ultimate plan. But I had to first surrender and wait for 3 years in this beautiful, amazing place. Then I had to, second of all, surrender that newfound idol at his feet. And this isn't even the end-all, be-all epitome of my life. Like, the story doesn't even end here. So there's a point where, yeah, you are going to have to take a step forward in faith. And maybe the door behind you will close and the next one will open. Or maybe they'll all start to close and you just stand and you just wait and just follow him. Because he will carry you. You don't have to fight your way into his will. He's already got you in the palm of his hand. Because his will isn't dependent on you keeping up with it or being in it. It's all based on him and his grace.